Okay. Good evening. It is 7:02 p.m. and my name is Denvin O'Connell. I'm going to call to order the Town of North Andover Finance Committee at, I said 7:02 p.m. We do have a quorum, so we will get started. We are called to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone could please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you very much. We do not have a very big agenda tonight, so it could be a quick meeting, but I know you all know we have some long one coming up next. So I think if we could just dive right into this one, it would be good. The first order of business is public comment. I don't see any folks from the public here, so I'll just give it a no. Okay. So yeah, hearing no public comment, we'll move on to the next one, which is a discussion of last 2 weeks ago, I guess, presentation from the town and the school departments. So I did ask Lynn, who's always here, and Jim was nice enough to, Dr. Milley was nice enough to come by. So if we have any follow-up questions on the town budget presentation we saw or the school budget presentation we saw, they are both here, so kindly at our disposal to ask any questions. And as I think I said to both of them, if we don't have any, then that's fine too, and they should feel free to go home. But I would open it up at this time to see if anybody has any questions.
I did have some questions.
Okay.
That didn't strike me until afterwards, and it's for Dr. Milley, if you don't mind. Sorry to put you on the hot seat. I had two questions, and I'll throw them both out and let you sort of handle them in whichever order you want. The first was, and I'm looking through the presentation and not seeing it, but I recall seeing a slide or hearing discussion about the projected increase and how the recovery services will fold over into, it will be covered by the projected increase in the budget, not for this upcoming fiscal year, but for 2 years out. And I recall seeing that increase was projected to be around 6 or 7%. And I'm curious to understand how you got to that number, because that seems like a bigger increase year over year than what we've seen historically. So I'd like to get behind that a little bit. And then my second question to you is, last year, I can't remember with COVID if it was last year or the year before, you and Dr. Gilligan had presented sort of a 5-year plan of the additional teachers and resources that you were looking to add to the school department, especially in hand with the building increases that we're hoping will come through with Facilities Master Plan 2. And that wasn't part of your presentation, so I was curious to hear if that is still the expectation for what you're projecting out long term, or if that's shifted, and if that's information that will be made available to the Finance Committee and the town as they're considering both this budget and the Facilities Master Plan 2, which, as we know, the school buildings and the personnel sort of go hand in hand. So that's a lot, but hopefully you understand what my questions are.
I do. So the first one, it's a good question. Basically, what we have done is we've taken the recovery service positions and the long-term plan positions, and a lot of, as we said in the presentation, a lot of those long-term plan positions are part of the recovery services plan as well. And we project those coming on. We have about half of them that are going to be funded through this budget increase. And then what we have found over the last couple of years, especially this year, with recovery services, is it's not just the new positions that we've had to have, but we've had to have a lot of extra time for our existing staff, whether it's custodians, TAs, in order to manage through the pandemic. So what you see as far as if everything continued the same way into next year and the year after that, then 6.93 is kind of the worst case scenario. I don't anticipate it being that number. I think that what we'll find next year, not having to deal with COVID, that we're going to be able to scale back to a more normal daily staffing situation. And so what will be in there will be the positions not covered by this budget increase. And so I anticipate, like I said, that's a worst-case scenario. I don't think it's going to be that. It's going to be something lower than that.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
and so I just wanted to project the worst-case scenario.
So that's 6.93, and I'm glad to hear you say that because I was looking for it and I couldn't find it, and I remembered seeing it. Is that sort of, if all of the recovery positions continue on, sort of, that's what that 6.93
So it goes,
reflects?
it kind of goes into the second question too, because moving forward, we're transitioning from recovery services to long-term plan. So recovery services positions go away and they're replaced by the long-term plan positions. And those are what are in that. We're anticipating no more recovery services positions for that the year after. And that'll be long-term plan positions. And then so your second part of your question, the positions that we have in the long-term plan have remained the same. And the only difference, remember the timeline that I had? The only difference is that this year we're adding, or next year, FY23, we're adding in to the operating budget some of those long-term plan positions. And then the following year, we add in the rest other than the teaching positions that go along with the projects. And so after that year, what happens is if we don't have a project coming online, then we're just looking at level services.
Okay.
And if it's a year with a project coming online, then however many teachers are needed for that project, that's the extra increase in that budget year.
I see. And so has that been modeled out? Like, do you guys have a version of that we could look at? And if you don't, that's okay, because I imagine things will sort of shift. But I'm curious to know if you have sort of plotted that out. Because I always found it really helpful when you came with that sort of long-term view of what the increases were going to be year over year and where it was headed.
Yeah, so what I can say is best, I could do that, but I'm not sure how useful it is. I'll have a better idea once if the two projects are approved at this town meeting, middle school and Kittredge, those are the two biggest impact on the operating as well. So once I start talking to whoever is hired to be the architect and get a sense of the timeline, then I'll be able to say, okay, FY25, we anticipate middle school teaching positions being added to the operating budget. FY27, we anticipate 10 or whatever the number is of elementary teachers being added.
I see. Thank you.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Is that acceptable?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be, I think that it might be interesting for the voters to see that hand in hand, right? Even if it's not, but I don't want to create a lot of extra work for you, so I'm mindful of that. But I know that I always found it interesting to think like, oh, okay, when this particular project comes online, like the middle school means 10 more teachers, or Kittredge means 3 more teachers, or whatever the number. I don't recall what they are, so I hope nobody takes these numbers as serious. But that to me was always kind of part of the whole picture, was not only the cost of the building, but also the cost of the additional teachers and the new classrooms and all of that. That was something in my mind that was kind of coupled together. So I think it's interesting information to have.
Sure, and it actually isn't hard. It's just, at this point, I'd rather wait just to have that more information, to have a better sense and estimate of when they are going to happen.
I get it. It's weird to put it down on a, like, it's going to be this fiscal year
And
when
then
you
it
have
doesn't
no
happen,
idea.
and like, wait, what
And
happened?
then everybody gets all
Everybody's
bent out of
all
shape,
like,
yeah.
and people will hold you to it, which is
Right.
not, the intention. But
Right.
so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
And that's, and I think, what I'm hearing too is that once that sort of gets determined, you have no problem doing that and bringing it back to us so that we can discuss it. And that makes me feel comfortable at the very least, so.
Yeah, the interesting part is, if you looked at last year's presentation, which had the long-term plan and the kind of guessed
Right.
at where those, it's not that far off. So it hasn't changed much, but it will change a little bit, especially with Kittredge being approved
Yeah, because that
with
moved
the
up,
MSBA,
right?
because that does extend the timeline on that project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Just, my understanding might be solid on this, but in Melissa's plan for, Master Plan 2, she talked about all in, like at this time, it's all in for this line, all in for that line. Does that all in include personnel?
So
Yeah.
for The total cost that she is talking about, she has included the capital cost
Yeah,
and the operating budget impact in the plan. She has shown that in her presentations.
Right.
but
Yeah.
that would include the personnel, the teachers.
That's the main part of it, yes.
Yeah, so that
And
actually,
the
so
desks
it's
and-
already baked into the budgeting for Master Plan 2.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't think I appreciated that the additional teachers were, I thought it
Yeah.
was like desks and electricity
Yeah.
and maybe custodians.
It's
I didn't
staffing
appreciate
is
the-
a big part of it, including like the OPEB liability.
Yeah, the
and
whole
benefit
thing.
costs.
Oh, that's right,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Everything.
Thank you
Yep.
for saying
Yeah.
that. That's really helpful.
So, that's pretty
There
exciting.
you go.
So,
That's even better.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Scrap that. Scrap everything. I said. This makes me feel a lot better
it'd
about
still
looking
be
at the
interesting to
financial-
know, like, how many teachers you're talking about, because that's a little bit more real, you know,
I
but
should have had
nevertheless,
Christine answer the question.
Next time I'll direct all my questions to Chris.
sometimes I pay attention, but anyway.
We're gonna bring her around with us everywhere. All right, anybody else have, yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
I have a question that might be a little bit related, and I know it might be hard because you're not looking at the exact same thing I'm looking at, but the recovery services positions in FY '23 are around 2 million. And you showed one slide that shows about half of that coming from operating budget and half from the ESSER. But the ESSER, I thought, was also, from a prior slide, was about 2 million. So where does the other half of the ESSER go?
Right, that other thing, the other things I was talking about, materials and supplies and extra time for not new positions or not, the temporary positions.
Okay,
That's coming from the ESSER funds as well.
okay, so that's normal operating stuff, though,
Correct.
right? So then is that gonna cause a problem the following year when you don't have?
That's what I'm anticipating, that we'll be weaning from that type of, that need.
Okay.
And it won't be there. That's why I said that was the worst case scenario
Okay.
of 6.93. That's, if we continued all of that, which including the extra, the ESSER's covering, but I see a lot of that going away.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anybody else for Dr. Mealy?
I had a general question for you. Dr.
Oh, not you, Ed.
I missed, full disclosure, I missed the last meeting, and I've been on vacation, so I probably should do my homework before I ask, but inflation obviously is a big thing right now, and I'm thinking, food prices for school lunches, busing, heating the buildings. How did you guys address inflation? We've got a war breaking out, it looks like it's getting worse. And I also remember reading that because of COVID, this is a big year of health insurance premium increases, probably see one of the biggest increases in years. Is that all? We feel we have a good handle on that?
Yeah, there's generally a lag in the impact of those things. So for instance, we generally, and I haven't talked to Lynn about this, but I have been approached by our consultant that we work with for locking into energy contracts, which are usually 3 years long. So for next year, we'll be okay, but the following 3 years after that could be something different that we'll have to address. Transportation, we're in the 5th year, coming up into the 5th year of the contract, so we'll have to go out to bid next year for that, but that's locked in. So generally speaking, what we have seen, it's been really good for the last few years, right? We've been right around 3% has been our level services consistently. And that's a combination of the step and column increases for our staff and COLA and any inflation that we've seen, but it's been pretty well controlled. So next year we'll be fine with what we're budgeting, but the following years we'll start to see the impact of greater inflation.
Got it. I actually wanted to ask you, my more specific question was, is this all like set in for next year? But you said it's the end of a 5-year lock-in. I didn't realize that. That kind of answers my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, good. Anybody else? No? Okay, thanks, Dr. Mealy.
Sure.
Thank you.
How about, does anyone have any questions for our town finance director? No? Okay, all right. Well, then, thank you both very, very much. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, so then that just leaves a couple more items, really one bigger item on the agenda, and that's discussion of the warrant letter. So I think, I'm hopeful, because I see it in my packet, that in everybody else's packet, we still have the warrant letter from last year to work as our base. I think our last meeting, we sort of talked about, these were the basic categories that, we're going to include again, minus to Jen's glee, the Stevens Estate section. Probably to everyone's glee, to be fair. But, what I did was I asked or challenged everybody to take a look at it and think about what sections they would like to sort of spearhead. I mean, I'll take the executive summary, so that would leave the municipal and shared expense budgets, the school department budget, the retiree health insurance and pension costs, reserves, the capital improvement plan, the enterprise funds. I guess we could break those out if we wanted to, because that's 6. I don't know that we need to break them out. So, but I would anticipate we would probably want at least 2 people to work together on the school part of it. I would think. I mean, let me just, since this, we did table this as a discussion, does anyone have any thoughts?
Well, judging from just stuff that I'm doing right now, I don't know that I could pick anything in particular.
Okay.
But I'd be more than happy to be your editor.
Yeah.
Because I figure that you're going to be doing the executive summary and also the conclusion.
Well, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So I can certainly help you on both of those, and I could also, take all the pieces that people send, they can send them to me,
Okay.
and I can edit them, put them in the same voice, that sort of
That's
thing.
great.
You knit it all together and put it into something, and then pass it back on to you for whatever you want to put into it, and then it comes back to another meeting, I think.
Okay.
and
Yeah,
we
it
all
does.
read it,
Yes.
and so I can do that for you.
Okay.
I'm trying not to have to think.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So then why don't we do this? Well, how about, let's talk about the school department. Do we have any volunteers for, let's start with,
gonna
let's
look at
start with, I'm gonna look at everybody. I'm gonna look at everybody. I mean, look, I realize this is the toughest, or not the toughest, but the most time-consuming part of this. So do we have a couple volunteers? I mean, I'd love to do this all volunteer wise. I don't want to be the guy that
Everybody sinks into
assigns
their
work to folks, but we do need to get this done in the next month. So you do have a month. Well, probably less, probably 3 weeks.
Is anybody here ever served in the school committee?
Yes, but no.
Yeah,
That was a loaded question. I was
Yeah.
kidding. I knew the answer to that.
Actually, it's not that bad this year.
honestly, I hate to say this, and I'm knock on wood, but I think this year will be pretty easy. I mean, I think things are pretty
It's pretty-
squared away and evident.
You know what, the Stevens Estate is over, so I'm used to doing really difficult portions of this. I'll do this if someone wants to help me.
Yeah, could we get somebody else to help,
I
Jen?
marvelous.
I helped Chris write it last time, so I can help you write it. if
Okay.
that's-
There you
Somebody you're
go.
responsible for.
Thank you both.
I did 2 pieces at the enterprise funds, the piece you didn't do, the harder piece. So I'd be happy to do that again.
You want to do the enterprise fund?
Nobody wants to fight for it.
Water and sewer.
Does anybody?
municipal like I did last year.
Okay. Okay, so now we got reserves and capital improvement.
I'm happy to do either one.
That was actually where all the action was, the other stuff was.
Okay.
Whichever one someone else doesn't want to do.
Pretty go home.
Well, we
I
have.
can do one
We
too,
burned
it
more
doesn't
money
matter
than
to
we
me.
spent.
Okay, well, how about this? Do you 3, would you, although you
No, that's
you-
fine.
you didn't, okay.
I'm comfortable with CIPs.
Why don't you 3 take the remaining 2, which would be, the,
Well, it's 3.
oh,
right?
it's 3, right?
It's 3,
Retiree,
yeah.
okay, so there you go. So who wants retiree health
I'll
and
do
pension costs?
retiree.
Okay. Reserves,
Um,
Nancy or Eva, does either one jump
Do you have
out?
any preference between the capital improvement and the reserves?
No, they're
Okay.
both equal.
Okay, reserves, yeah, I'll do the reserves, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do the
Capital
CIP.
improvement, okay.
There you go.
All right, well, then that does that. So, I will get back to everybody on timing for when we need to have drafts in and that sort of thing, but, from the initial dates that I've heard, I think we have to have it completed by a month from now, mid-April. So, you know, that gives you at least 2 to 3 weeks to work on this, if you want to leave it to the very end.
College.
Yeah, right. Well, I did last year, so.
We just have to have enough time to edit and coalesce, and it's interesting, when you think it's going to be all the same, but it isn't, because people write in different voices.
Yeah.
And you just want to make it cohesive, and that's all, and so you just need at least a day or two to do that.
Oh, you need more than
Maybe
that.
draft by April
Maybe.
1st.
What's that?
Draft.
I think, let me
Draft
double
right.
check,
Yeah.
let me double check to make sure that on the dates, but that seems about right. You know, let's put it in our back of our minds right now that we'll have drafts done by April 1st. Or I always like to say April 2nd, because when I say April 1st, everybody's like, oh, are you joking, or are you not joking? But, so we'll say the beginning of April, April 1st, we'll just say it.
It's a Friday.
And I will follow up the email with everybody to confirm the dates. I just want to check back with the town manager and Lynn to make sure that we have the correct dates and everything, because I don't want to give a date now and then have it be wrong. Okay, good. So that's where we are with that.
Donovan, I just want to mention, I'm going to be traveling the first 2 weeks of April, so I'm going to try to do
But
mine.
that wasn't approved by the committee.
So I'm going to try to do mine, you know, very soon and get the draft.
Awesome.
Should I send the draft to both of you?
Yeah,
or-
Actually, that would be
Okay.
fine. If
That'd
you
be
want to
terrific.
copy us both, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
can
I do anticipate having to talk to Lynn and to understand these accounts a
absolutely,
bit better.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
depending on her availability, but I imagine she's.
She's very
Available,
accessible,
okay.
yeah. She's very accessible. And for those who haven't done it before, please feel free to reach out to Lynn. You know, she is very helpful and very accessible.
She gets back in the email quicker.
Yeah, she does. Okay, well then we feel comfortable, I feel comfortable with that. Does anybody have any other discussions on that particular point? No? Okay.
That was easy, huh?
That was much easier than I anticipated, to be honest with you. I think last year was the only year I'd done it before, and we did it over Zoom. So I think that maybe I took it as being a little bit more cumbersome than it was or should have been, so
everything is easier in person, isn't it?
I would agree.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, well then, the only thing left we have on the agenda is the minutes from last meeting. So I don't know, they are in our packet. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read them, but I would certainly entertain a motion. I did read them, they looked okay to me.
I'll motion to approve the minutes from March 2nd.
Okay, Dustin has made a motion to approve the minutes from March 2nd. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Eva seconds,
Yeah, right.
and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted. So let's just talk a little bit about next week. So we do have the public hearing next week, and we'll have to vote on the capital improvement plan and the operational budget next week. And we're also going to have this, because of scheduling, this all unfortunately happens on the same night, and I apologize. The CPC chair is going to come in and talk about their recommendations as well. I saw that he presented to the select board on Monday night. I watched it. It was about 20 to 25-minute presentation. He has told me when I spoke to him earlier today that he does not think it'll be as long. He's going to send us the presentation that he gave, his PowerPoint presentation, so that we'll have it ahead of time, so that we can look at it. But it was a very good and thorough presentation. So I think it'll be pretty self-explanatory. Anything else from anybody else?
Do we have to consider the Royal Crest project at some point?
So,
Or
well,
how should we handle that?
yeah, so there was a development agreement, I believe, that came out yesterday, maybe, last night?
Monday.
Monday?
The
Was it
planning
Monday?
board and the board of select, or the select board had a joint meeting, which was, if you want to learn about Royal Crest, it was a really, really good meeting.
So that document just came out, so we need to figure that out,
Okay.
is the answer to your question.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. I've only been able to see the development agreement very briefly today, so I don't know the answer to your question. I
Okay.
think that we will have to have a discussion, at the very least, a discussion about it, as it
Yeah.
is, looks like it will be impactful in the upcoming fiscal years. So I think it is something that we should absolutely, at the very least, discuss in the context of this budget, so that we can, have a fair and accurate appraisal of it all.
It's going to be one of the larger issues at town meeting,
I would think.
so
I would think.
it might be part of your letter.
It may.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may,
Well, the other thing is there'll be a warrant article that we'll have to make a recommendation on.
Yes.
for sure,
Yes.
for sure.
Will we be asked to make a recommendation?
That's what it looks like right now, I think.
That's why I think we need, Town Manager Rodriguez in here, just to guide us in that. We probably should have asked Lynn while she was here, but it just seems like that we would.
I would think so.
I would think so, too.
Yeah.
That's the initial discussion that I've heard would be yes.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know for sure.
So will we receive more information? I mean, we can obviously look at this, but will we?
No, I'm going to make sure we get more information absolutely out to
'Cause
everybody.
I know I haven't been following it very closely.
But if
Yeah.
you want to know, I mean, like the meetings, the poor boards, so they had a super, super long meeting because they had meetings beforehand, and then they had the joint meeting, and then they went back to their respective meetings, and so I did not watch I watched the middle part, but I was so glad that I caught it, and that it was great. So that should be online pretty soon, I think, if not already. But definitely informative with a lot of opinions on both sides, and that would, I think, help you understand the pros and the cons, both, from the discussion. So that's why it's
Yeah.
definitely worth.
But it is
Worth watching.
it's a pretty big project that's going to have a significant impact on the town
Yeah.
budget. So it is definitely something that, we'll have to
The
take into
agreement
consideration.
is phenomenal. So,
All right, anything else up for discussion, folks? All right, well then I would entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
The movement to adjourn by Regina Keene and seconded by Chris Allen. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? At 7:30, the Town of North Andover Finance Committee is adjourned.
Wow.
Thank you.
I picked the right meeting to come to.
That's right.